Folks, JR, this episode of Fallen Badge, we're going to talk about the murder of Lieutenant Clarence Cox. It was May 12, 1981. Lieutenant Cox was working West Precinct. Now, he had just met up with a ward car in the area of Exchange in North Lauderdale. After speaking with the officers, they drove off, and Lieutenant Cox, he started cruising slowly through the Lauderdale courts. Now, some of you may have heard of that housing complex before. That's the one that's famous for being the first residence where Elvis Presley and his parents stayed when they moved to Memphis. Now, that complex is couple of blocks from 201 Poplar, which is the Criminal Justice Center, and at that time the communications was up on the 12th floor. So literally, if you've been in communications that night, you could have looked out the windows and watched some of this transpire. Anyways, Lieutenant Cox is cruising through that complex. Now, they're looking for a fella named LaRon Ronald Williams. Now, he was an escapee. He had cut a deal, took 10 years for murdering a prostitute in Nashville. Now, they sent him to the Memphis Correctional Center, which is out on Sycamore View Road in East Memphis, to serve his second-degree murder sentence. And evidently he didn't find the accommodations to his liking, so he escaped in April of 81. So Memphis is out looking for him. Now, somewhere in that complex, and I'm sorry to say I cannot tell you exactly where, can't seem to find out. Somewhere in that complex, Lieutenant Cox runs up on Williams. Now, Lieutenant Cox, he sees a male walking, so he stops him. Scene investigation would show later that the suspect had placed his hands on the trunk area of the lieutenant's car, which, of course, the theory being he put his hands on the trunk of the car because Lieutenant Cox told him to, because Lieutenant Cox is getting ready to pat him down. Now, Lieutenant Cox was no wallflower. In fact, he had been an amateur boxer in his day, and he was a stout man by anyone's estimation. But he had been suffering from a cold, and he was not feeling well, so he was not tip-top shape. The lieutenant didn't ask for any more cars. In fact, I don't know if the lieutenant even got on the radio or not. He may have. And anyways, he began his stop and frisk procedures without another car there. So the theory further goes that when Lieutenant Cox came up behind the male to pat him down, the male elbowed the lieutenant in the face. There apparently was some trauma to the lieutenant's face, nose area. Anyways, the male disarms the lieutenant and shoots the lieutenant to death. And then he takes off with the lieutenant's Model 10 .38 caliber revolver. Now, crime scene technicians were able to lift almost perfect set of prints from the trunk area, and they confirmed that the man responsible for killing Lieutenant Cox was the escapee Williams. Now, there is a rumor that was substantiated later by an inmate named Roderick Elmore. Now, Elmore said that Williams was driven to Jackson, Tennessee by a girlfriend who obviously placed her undying love for Williams above the fact that he had now committed 2 murders. Now, Williams, he's not in Jackson more than a couple of days. And by the way, if you're not familiar with Tennessee, Jackson's probably an hour and 15 minutes down I-40 from Memphis. Well, within a couple of days of being there, he burglarizes St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church on the Highway 45 bypass. Now, it's just south of I-40, and I believe that is exit 80A. So while he's in there burglarizing the place, he decides that's not good enough, so he kills Father John J. Jackson, who's the assistant pastor at St. Mary's. All the options he had, but he just had to kill a priest. So now he's got 3 murders to his credit. Well, he leaves the Catholic Church, and that's at night. The medical examiner thinks the father died somewhere around 8:30 p.m. Now, Williams takes that pistol that's got 2 dead bodies on it now, and he sells it to a fella that owns a store there in Jackson. And the store owner only gives him half the money. Says, I've got to check the serial number first, make sure it's all right, and then you come back and I'll give you the rest of the money. So Williams takes that bit of money, and you'd think he'd hightail it knowing what's going to happen when that serial number gets checked, but evidently Williams wasn't very intelligent. What he made him for in intelligence, I guess, would have been just straight violence. Anyways, so the owner of that store, he calls Jackson PD, and they run the serial number, and of course it comes back a hit showing the pistol was taken from Lieutenant Cox of the Memphis Police Department, and Lieutenant Cox is dead. So Jackson PD, they catch Williams there at the hotel he's staying at. Now, Williams is tried and convicted of murdering both Lieutenant Cox and Father J, and he's sentenced to death. Now, before the state of Tennessee can carry out the death sentence, which of course, as you know, would take 15 or 20 years, well, the Karma bus made a stop at the Tennessee State Prison in Nashville on July 7, 1985. Williams was out in the exercise yard with the other death row inmates. Well, he made such an impression on them that 8 of them jumped him. 8 death row inmates jumped him, and they beat him to death with fists, shod feet, and barbell weights. Now, there is another rumor that persists that cartons of cigarettes were sent to the offending inmates on death row in Nashville. Compliments of the Memphis Police Department. I obviously cannot verify that rumor. Sad state of affairs that someone of Williams's character or lack thereof could take the life of 2 good men. Now, I don't know anything about the female, the alleged prostitute in Nashville that he killed, but I don't imagine she deserved to die either. I wish I had more information on the actual stop and confrontation inside the Lauderdale courts. Obviously, Williams didn't give a statement regarding his interaction with Lieutenant Cox, but there's enough from the crime scene to indicate what I just told you is what happened. All right, folks, that's going to wrap up this episode.